We have Ms. Young with us, who's connecting slowly here. Sorry, Kathy. You wanted to address this meeting? Unmute your computer, Kathy.
Yes,
Can you hear us now?
I can. I could heard you all along, but here we go.
All right, Kathy, go ahead.
I'm just going to read to you from my script. Sorry. My name is Kathy Young. I grew up in Camden from the age of 3 until I went away to college and then was away for 30 years. I've been back in Camden for 5. My mother lived at 33 C Street for 54 years, and I live there now. The house has been standing for well over 100 years. In the early days, the harbor side of the house sloped down to a rocky beach. The working waterfront was one building. When my parents bought the house in '69 for $17,000, my dad worked for the Coast Guard out of Rockland, running the icebreakers and buoy tenders, while my mom was an elementary school librarian. We had a small sloop while I was growing up. I sold tickets on the dock for the Betselma, and I crewed on the Roseway. I kayak many mornings in the season, and I also serve on the harbor committee. I can see the action of the harbor out of my kitchen window, although not for much longer. But let me tell you, what I see is a very busy harbor. Camden has a long history of being considered beautiful. It has never stunk like Rockland or Belfast because we were in the boat building business and not the fish and chicken processing. But our harbor has been rough and untidy, busy and dirty, and we are currently still in the top 5 harbors in Maine for water pollution. It has been, and for most part remains, a working waterfront. That is part of its charm, along with the wooden boats. Right now, there are 6 windjammers, 7 day sailors, a harbor cruise boat, and 11 lobster boats that get town of Camden permits. There are other sail and motor tour boats that work from private docks. Resident seasonal boat owners who rent finger floats from the town, outer harbor moorings, and inner harbor slips total 1,499 boats when every space is rented. And every space right now has a waiting list. Kayaks, stand-up paddleboards, the Yacht Club Sailing School, cruise ships with their tenders. Add to all of this a new and improved Lyman Morris at Wayfarer Marine, attracting bigger and flashier yachts coming and going, will create, and is already, a lot of pressure on a small space. The number 1,499 does not include the finger floats that Lyman Morris rents in what is known as Rum Row, and I don't know how many that is. So my statement today is not against Lyman Morris at Wayfarer Marine per se. They are a business in a changing culture, and they want to provide a more elegant service with modern buildings that will be adaptable in the future as needs and demands change. They added a restaurant and a distillery almost immediately when they took over Wayfarer Marine. Those are allowed businesses in the Harbor District in the zoning ordinance. In fact, all manner of commercial enterprise beyond marine is allowed, exactly like what is on the opposite side of the harbor, with hotels, bars, breweries, restaurants, and shops. So let's talk about residential impact. Sure, there is ample designated parking, but it isn't worth much if no one can find it. The signage up till now has been, quite frankly, inadequate. C Street has been full of parked cars because visitors are wandering around looking for how to get down to the restaurant, and the street then becomes very unsafe for two-way traffic. Some would say that the speed with which this proposal has gone from presented draft to approval, and I'm assuming it'll get through the planning board because there's no reason it shouldn't, it has carefully met every code, height, and restriction, and that's very pro-business and good for Camden. But no one, it seems to me, has stopped to reflect very deeply on the impact, good, bad, or indifferent, to the harbor, and most importantly, the town, with these dramatic and improved and important changes. How many boats, literally, can fit in Camden Harbor at one time? What happens, alternately, if the yachts don't come, and Lyman Morris decides that they need to rent out more of their space to other businesses to stay afloat? Do we want 3 more restaurants and a brewery down on this side of the harbor? I was told directly that as long as they meet parking requirements, that is allowed. Hotel room rental is also allowed as long as it's not on the ground level. If the boats don't come, do we really want to surround our harbor with eating, drinking, and shopping? We will have transitioned to 100% recreation and retail and stepped away from an authentic working harbor. I care very much about the harbor, and I think you do too. So I'm just sharing my experience and my insight for your consideration.
Kathy, thank you very much. Kathy, you have that in writing?
I do. It started out as 4 pages. You were only suffering through 2.
Would you be so kind as to get that to one of us? Myself is fine, so we have a record of it. Thank you very much.
Yep. And I really am not meaning to be critical. I am literally the only house on the street that is losing my view. I will invite the assessor over to assess that. And in fact, the apartments next to me are gaining a view. So I get that there are winners and there are losers. I am just grateful my mother is not going to be here to see the losing part of a very exquisite view. But I'm sure Steve Pixley will be pleased. I will not be reporting.
Well, a lot of poignant points there, and I want to read them again. But thank you so much for having such high interest in that. I know your passion, and I'm sure we all share it. And there's a lot of elements to discuss in the future there that they won't be ignored. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much for coming in and taking the time.
Sure.
Good evening.
I want the 4-page. I want to see the 4-page version.
Thanks, Kathy.
Okay. Yep. Bye-bye.
All right, back to our agenda. The next item we have on our agenda is a public hearing for, what was it for again? Franny's Restaurant at 55 Chestnut Street. As we have in past meetings, I'm not going to go through the rules and regulations except to say that, of course, the public hearing's intent is to provide the public an opportunity to provide comment for consideration by the select board in adjudicating on the item at hand. But since I know there are no public input, I'm going to, well, basically immediately revert to select board deliberation on the matter. Does anyone on the select board want to ask a question or motion?
I'll make a motion. I've gone through the paperwork. Everything looks in order. I'll make a motion that we approve the renewal liquor license for Franny's Bistro at 55 Chestnut Street.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Not hearing any, go to roll call vote to Jenna.
Aye.
Allison.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
And Bob, aye, 5-0. Thank you very much. We will adjourn public hearing and move to a discussion, approval or disapproval of the board minutes from November 4th, 2020 select board meeting. Comments, corrections, motion?
I have a couple two comments. And 2 items, I think almost the first one and the last one. The public input on non-agenda items, it said Chairman Feliciani read one letter from a resident to the record regarding Tannery Park being used as a staging area. That should specify that it's talking about staging area for the town
DOT project.
What it's a staging area for, and that also is not mentioned down at the bottom in the manager's report, I believe.
Okay. Any other comments? Allison.
Oh, well, this isn't necessarily minutes, but I guess it is. Referring to it as Tannery Park has been problematic, I think, sometimes, because the more that, when we originally approved the use of that name, it was very explicitly stated that that wasn't meant to infer that it was a park or an official town park in any way. I think ultimately that was a mistake what we did there, because the only thing that has been remembered is the Tannery Park part of it. Of course, there are, at the time we said there are business parks, there are industrial parks, there are parks. But I think for the purposes of our own documents, it might be good to stop referring to it as Tannery Park, or that maybe it's a discussion that we need to have at some point, whether that's a confusing term for anybody who wasn't, in the room at the time of, agreeing to refer to it like that. So I don't have a specific thing, I guess, right now, but
All right,
Also, to make another point, it wasn't the same select board then as it is now. So none of you are really bound to the decision that was made by that particular select board.
I,
oh, well, I was here for that. But
I was on that board.
I voted on.
No, you were, it was John French,
Oh.
yourself.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
you know, there's a few people who are, it's
I
a
agree,
different
I agree.
board.
That can be readdressed. It is what it is
Yeah.
right now, and I would have a tendency to agree. It's confused a lot of people.
Yes.
I would agree with what Allison said, and. that
But
was-
I would just, my comment is that this board isn't bound to a decision made by that prior board, even if
Understood.
there's similar members. on
Understood,
it.
understood, and we can look at that and take action in the future, I would agree. Mark, did you make a motion or not?
I'll make a motion now, just to clarify on the second part of what I've said. It says approved, and under the manager's report it says approved ranger contractor to use the tannery for staging. There it just says the tannery,
oh, perfect.
minimizing impact and making the project go smoothly. I just think it would be clarified to say what the project it's being used for in both places. And with that, those changes, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for 11/4/20.
Second.
Motion made in second, discussion. Not hearing any, roll call vote. Taylor?
Aye.
Jenna?
Aye.
Allison?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Bob? Aye. 5-0. Thank you very much. Let's see, the fourth item on our agenda is one consent agenda item, which is renewal of the lodging and Vittler licenses for 16 Bayview Inn. Do I hear any objection to this item on the consent agenda? Not hearing any of this item is hereby adopted. Item 5 we have 3 action items to discuss, the first of which is the select board meeting schedule for 2021. Do we have comments on the proposed dates from anybody that has some conflict, or Mark?
Yes, let me pull it up. I noticed that this particular year, we really run into in January, in February, in April, and July, basically, and September, our meetings all are the day after holidays. Or in July 4th, it's 2 days after the holiday. And those very often are vacation weeks, weeks that people take off, although nobody gets to take any time off anymore because of COVID. But I wouldn't mind seeing if there's a way to adjust the schedule so we're not always the day after holidays. Just for convenience for people are going out of town or traveling. Just, it just seems to hit it pretty hard this year. Maybe we change a couple of them. I would particularly suggest maybe the July 4th week, because that's always a big week. I mean, we may all be here, but there's also, for the people that are interested in either attending a meeting, if that's back, or paying attention, we won't be there. So I leave it open to suggestions.
Well, certainly good points. The only concern, as I look at it, because I thought the same thing, it seems practically speaking, if we stick by trying to keep 2 weeks minimum between meetings,
Right.
the only option we have, and we can do it, is we could make some meetings on Wednesdays, as we have done one in here for the day after election in November. But I don't see.
It's more the week I'm concerned of, not just the day after.
What if we plan way ahead and either start on the first or second week of January, so that as it rolls up through the months, it ends up landing on an off week for those holidays, and then we don't have to move things around.
You'd have to jog the whole thing. That could work.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Just like
If we-
start
it
it so that
basically-
it doesn't land on a
Tell you
holiday.
what we'll do, why don't we, that's a big change, why don't we make that change, Audra, to jog the whole thing by a week from January to December, and we can finalize it now or next month, I don't care which one, because it doesn't look like it would cause any problems, except we,
I mean, it would in June, because of town meeting, and
yeah.
in November, but here's what you could do, is sort of make it up on one of those 5 Tuesday months. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Let's recraft.
So for the beginning of the schedule, it's on the 2nd and 4th, January, February, March, April, 2nd and 4th Tuesdays, and then
And then job.
I'm trying to think of it's the May, June, that's a bit awkward.
It's very awkward.
That was
Why
just,
don't we table, we're early in the year, why don't we table it till the next meeting and give Audra some time to look at it and see if there's
That's
we can
fine.
adjust some of it. It
I
just
think
concerns me that we're hitting basically every single vacation day.
Understood.
Hearing Mark's concern, I would second that motion to table. I want to look at what he's saying.
All right.
I didn't analyze it that way, so I'm curious.
Yeah, I don't really understand.
We'll have to address it in December, obviously. Or, the worst case, we can always just cover January and play with it a little bit. So why don't we do that, Audra, and let's play with it and go over it and see what options we have. Thank you. That'll work. Back to our agenda, which would be the second item, which be the confirmation of the town manager's appointment of Wyatt Philbrook as Code Enforcement Officer, LPILEI. And I'm not sure what that means.
Okay, so code enforcement officer, licensed plumbing inspector, licensed electrical inspector. And typically, we would have, Wyatt at this meeting to introduce him to everyone. Unfortunately, he was unavailable tonight. He's doing a planning board meeting, I believe, for the city of Rockland, where he's coming to us from. And we want to be very sensitive and understanding of, him finishing up his time there. So I think that we can all hopefully wait until next meeting for you to all meet Wyatt, because he's going to be a great member of the team. Everyone's really excited to have him on. Just glowing things about him from the city of Rockland and everybody that's worked with him. So an employee that we're very fortunate to get in that role as the code enforcement officer. Jeremy, do you have anything to add about?
No, I think you said exactly right. We're really excited. He's coming on board next Monday, we are in desperate need of him to come on board. He's been a code officer, assistant code officer for the city of Rockland. Prior to that, he was property manager and facilities manager at the Vineyard at Cellar Door for a number of time. He's been a contractor. He's been a welder. He's been a fisherman out on a fishing boat in Alaska. He's done a lot of stuff. He's a really solid guy. He's thoughtful, he's respectful, he's a kind person, and we're really excited to have him on board. So he was disappointed he couldn't be here tonight. He did reach out to me yesterday. He was planning on being here, and something came up with the other code officer and he couldn't attend the meeting. And Wyatt's that kind of guy. He's like, I'm gonna fill in and do what I need to do for the city of Rockland. So he's gonna meet you next time around. So
Thanks, Jeremy. We have a motion to confirm the town manager appointment.
I had a comment, but I guess, is discussion over? Do you want me to, I would motion that we approve.
Well, yeah, I was looking for a motion, unless it wanted more discussion, but otherwise we'll go for a motion.
I just want to say something, but I'll say it whenever you want. I can say it after the motion or.
No, go ahead, Alice, go ahead.
So could he come to our next select board meeting? In general, I would love it if we could step it up or get back to the way that we maybe did things a little more often before, where new employees would come and be introduced to us, especially police officers. And well, actually, most of them. I just really don't like that feeling when there are new employees that I think might be a new employee, but I'm kind of a shy person and don't want to accost anybody like, hey, are you a new police officer? Like, tell me about yourself. If we can try to do that a little bit more often, I would love it if we could go through with the police officers, because that, especially for the community, would be able to know, like, these are the people that, are out here helping you.
I would agree.
it was our intention to have him here, and he wanted to be here. This came up last minute, so you'll meet him next time.
Like even some of the new public works employees, and we've had some great people come on, and it would be good for, the community to be
Sure.
introduced.
Sure.
Wyatt does live in Rockport, I will say. He's a local,
Oh,
I know.
All right, people, motion to confirm.
so moved.
Second,
Motion made and second. Discussion, anybody? Roll call vote. Mark?
aye.
Allison?
Aye.
Jenna?
Aye.
Taylor?
Aye.
And Bob, I also. Thank you very much and welcome aboard. And we'll look forward to seeing Wyatt next month. The third item on action items is the approval or slash discussion on the to task CDAC with the review of tannery proposals in line with recommended criteria. And we do have one guest who is asked to participate in this one, Ms. Sarah Holland. Hello, Sarah. I think she's muted.
You're muted.
That's okay. So anyway, Audra, who should lead this discussion?
How about you just ask Sarah to speak first and then,
Oh, okay. Sarah, did you want to make some comments to this agenda item? This one is Sarah Holland. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, can you hear me?
You're muted.
That's okay.
No, she's not.
Yeah, there's a sound delay, I think, Sarah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sarah, did you want to make some comments to this agenda item?
Yes, I would.
Sarah.
Hi, I know some of you, don't know all of you. Hear me?
Sarah, we're getting feedback. Are you watching YouTube or anything? There's a sound delay, I think, Sarah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sarah, did you want to make some comments to this agenda item?
Yes, I would. Hi, I know some of you, don't know all of you. Hear me?
Somebody must be watching the YouTube channel in the background. Let's go through and systematically mute people and see what happens. It must have been Sarah.
Say again, Allison, I didn't get that.
Somebody
It's
had
clear that
YouTube.
somebody is watching the live stream. And the way to figure it out is usually to go through and individually mute and unmute people. But it looks like it's cleared up when Sarah muted herself. So Sarah, if you happen to have the YouTube on or the live stream on anywhere.
She's muted now.
Sarah, you're muted.
We may need to unmute her.
I did. Now she's gone. I think she disconnected. I don't see her as a participant anymore. Let's see if she comes back in.
Maybe she's trying to rejoin. Maybe she
I think
thought
so.
that was the problem.
I think so. I think so. You pressed the wrong button. We'll give her 1 minute. Background music.
Up, there we go. Now you have to unmute, Sarah. There we go.
All right, sorry for the confusion. I think I was watching the live feed and then you invited me in, so I didn't know the procedure. I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
I am trying to do some catch up on the activities of CDAC and the tannery, so I can be more informed about that. And in doing that, I was concerned that I was having a hard time getting records of the minutes. There are some minutes on the website up through September 2017. There are no minutes of 2018, and then there are YouTube videos of the 4 meetings in 2019.
All right.
So,
Sarah, this agenda item is a discussion about the CDAC's potential task involvement. I know you've had communication
Okay.
today about.
This does relate to it because I just want to voice my concern as a citizen that if CDAC is going to be charged with this responsibility, it seems like they're not a very transparent committee, and I'm concerned about that. I think that they're duty bound to be more transparent than they've been.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they've lost some of the public trust because it's very difficult to find out what's going on. So then that leads to rumors and people are concerned about things which maybe they shouldn't be concerned about. So it is related to this agenda item. If you're going to empower them to make this decision, it needs to be transparent. And I think the public needs to know when these meetings are so that they can be invited to participate like this. So I don't know right now as a citizen when the meetings are or how to participate or who is the contact person. Is it Jeremy or is it the chairman? So that's the point of that comment.
Okay, no, that's very poignant. Thank you, Sarah, for being succinct. Now, Jeremy, you could probably address some of Sarah's comments about CDAC and the meetings and that kind of thing, because I know you had a chat. I think you had a chat with her today, but please respond.
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. And I did send you a couple of emails today, and I'm still working on the minutes. I'm gathering those minutes together that we do have. I will say when it comes to the last time CDAC met and discussed the tannery was when we were talking about the RFP, and the RFP was in a draft form. This goes back, boy, almost a year and a half ago now, because we ended up running into, and I think most of the community knows, we ended up having some new assessments done on the riverbank. So prior to that, CDAC Select Board tasked CDAC with reviewing the draft RFP that I had done and had prepared. And the community was quite involved. There were probably 30 people in attendance at that meeting. And that was the last time there was any substantive discussion about the RFP or what to do with the tannery. There was a follow-up that talked about the environmental issues that were taking place, which then actually made the RFP process. We just kind of put that on hold. And the select board, and that was well known in the town. There was some press coverage on it as well. So then but at that time, CDAC was fully supportive of the RFP as it was drafted. And likewise with the select board, they were looking at it, I think, from trying to have the RFPs be as open as possible. Oftentimes RFPs are very narrowed and they're asking for, say, a housing project or a business park or a retail or whatever. Select board at the time and CDAC fully, I think, agreed that it should be as wide open as possible to get as many possible scenarios as we can. And so CDAC after that has not had any discussions. We have not met since COVID happened. I will say I've had a number of emails between CDAC and myself, primarily about businesses in town and how we could support them during COVID. And that was the extent of any involvement with CDAC since then. So now we come to where we are today, and I think it was March 20th, and it's just ringing in my head, or April 20th, March probably, when we got the final targeted brownfield assessment report back from EPA. And this was specifically, we had concerns about contamination and solid waste that was on the riverbank. And we didn't want to move forward with the RFP until we really understood more about the site environmentally. EPA funded an assessment on that. We had a report done by a firm that was hired by EPA. We had an additional environmental consultant kind of overseeing it and providing guidance and consultation to the town on it. And then so here we are today. We need to we do have this cleanup that has to happen. It has to finalize by October of next year. We have the potential for a 6-month extension. And in order to prepare that cleanup, we have to, as part of the brownfield program, we have to prepare an ABCA, which is an alternative brownfield cleanup assessment plan that you do, looking at different alternatives on use of the site. We have to do a community relations plan. All that stuff has to happen relatively quickly in order to get the cleanup finalized. And in everyone's best interest, it's most efficient to try to have a use on board as we move forward.
Jeremy, I think we're going into a little more detail than what Sarah
Okay.
needs to understand. Who's
in the
involved
end-
in makes decisions. So just to keep this really simple,
Yeah.
CDAC doesn't have any authority to make a decision on
Correct.
proposals and how the site's going to be used. Neither does the select board. Ultimately, that decision is going to lie with voters. So the role that CDAC is going to be playing in this is simply reviewing proposals against a criteria. And we're going to talk about exactly what's going to be in that criteria and what the system is going to be that we're going to task them with using to review those proposals. So that's their role. And then it comes to the select board for further review before anything goes to voters ultimately for a decision. So.
And that will happen in the next 3 weeks is when CDAC is intended to meet. And that will be a live Zoomed meeting like this.
Okay, that's great. That's good to know. Well, one of the reasons I was looking for previous meetings is that in reading the RFP and the guidelines, I was a little, again, I'm trying to play catch up here from years ago when I was paying attention. And back then, there was, a meeting at the middle school, and the town had spent a whole lot of money hiring a landscape designer to come up with a multi-use plan, and that had gone to the voters, and I thought that the town had voted and everybody had pretty much agreed that it was going to be a multi-purpose.
That did
It never went to
Never went
voters.
to voters, Sarah. I'm sorry, you're incorrect.
Well, I remember the vote was, do you want it to be business or do you want it to be park? And then there was a whole
We're-
presentation, and the town spent like tens of thousands of dollars on a consultant to come up with a plan. So what I'm wondering is, obviously at some point that was jettisoned. Obviously at some point it was decided, we're just going to throw all this away and we're going to start from scratch, and it's just going to be
No.
business.
You're incorrect, Sarah.
So that's why I was trying to get a hold of the old meetings, because I don't understand when did it go off the rails? And so my concern about the CDAC is they're going to be looking at the criteria that in the RFP, and none of that mentions anything about
Okay.
a multi-purpose.
Thank you, Sarah. Go ahead, Allison.
I just want to say, I've also had lots of concerns about this process in the past. I was at some of those middle school meetings. I think lots of people in Camden have been frustrated with the way that this process has gone for different reasons over a long period of time. And so our only intention here, and my personal goal, and I think what is the goal of everybody, is to finally be able to present options to voters in as transparent and the least confusing way as possible. I remember that time when they did the select board got frustrated years ago, and they said, well, I don't know what people want to do with this. We had been trying to market it for economic development, but then there was resistance in the neighborhood to Northeast Ambulance. And so they said, well, let's put it out to voters to do what was a non-binding straw poll. And of course, as usual, the question was not framed in a very helpful way. You had to choose one thing or the other, industrial or park. A lot of people felt frustrated that they couldn't, choose a more middle ground option. And so then a second round of the tannery work group came along, and that's where that multi-use idea came up. There were, like you said, there were a lot of meetings at the middle school. I remember going to those meetings and being asked by town officials not to bring up anything about the contamination or the debris on the side of the riverbank. There were people that felt like lots of people basically through multiple rounds have felt like, the town has really botched this, either by not being transparent or by not asking questions in the right way. And so one of the things we did, this board has done over the past couple of years, has been to require that all committee meetings be live streamed on YouTube. And so, yeah, it sounds like we're behind on minutes. That's something that is, I go on and on about that with the planning board. Sometimes it's very frustrating. But we have really made an effort to say, okay, we're not going to do any more of this stuff where it's like whatever they decide to put in the minutes is the only thing that makes it in. So we are really trying to make it super transparent. So at the end of the day, the select board's trying to get to a point where we can put something out to voters that we think is likely to succeed. And every time so far that that's happened in the past, the select board has gotten to the point where they're like, ooh, they don't think they have anything that voters might approve. And so we're just trying to not mess it up this time. We have a range of options, and we're going to try to be as absolutely as transparent as possible, because at the end of the day, my hope is that people will at least not be angry with the process. Right. Nobody's going to get everything they want, and so I totally understand your concerns, and we'll work hard at that.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the actual item here, and Sarah, you might look at the last select board meeting video where we talked about the process. We're just getting into step one of, which is to have CDAC do some homework as an advisory committee to the select board, who will then do our presentations by the three or four bidders. And then there'll be a third step to get to the recommendation public discussion about what will objectively be on the ballot in June of 2021. With that, Jeremy, we have a draft in our packet to address the criterion, I believe, for guidance so that the CDAC can do some homework so the select board doesn't have to do it, to make our next step in the process more efficient. Jeremy, do you want to lead that discussion?
I can. It looks like Allison wants to say something. Allison,
go ahead.
First.
Allison, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to talk for a second about the reason that CDAC would be a part of this. It's not just a committee that we randomly selected. I think part of this is about seeing through the history of town planning that has happened. Mm-hmm. CDAC has, for I think something like a decade. I just read an article from 2012 that was recommendations from CDAC about this property, and so they've historically been the committee that has been the most involved and were tasked with this. And so I think we want to make sure that, because there is a lot of historical knowledge there, and some of those people participated even in this tannery work group with the multi-use thing. Roger Moody is an example of that. There is so much history there that it feels like the right thing for us to do is to say, hey, group of people that has looked at this for longer than we have, are there things that we should keep in mind from that those exercises as we move forward asking questions? And so it's not the only group that is going to be able to give input, but we want to make sure that we don't miss something by saying, okay, here we are, new to the select board, and we're just going to ignore the decade of town planning that has happened before us. And it just seems only fair to.
Well put, Allison. Thank you. But getting into this, what's in the package, I'd like the select board to address, in particular, the matrix that is at the end of the dialogue on what's included and requested in the RFP. And in terms of its format, that's what we should be discussing now. What's format and its content. In particular, is this point system, which I don't know where that came from.
I can kind of, because Jeremy and I have talked about this a little since, we put this in the packet as sort of a starting place. And I think that we both agree, and I think that, based on discussions the select board has had, that having a point system isn't very valuable to all of you. You're not going to get sort of the direction or guidance that you're looking for with a point system. So instead of that, I think it's more important that we get comments from CDAC on whether or not a particular proposal meets that criteria or not, to the extent which it does or does not, and any questions that might be clarifying. Perfect. To ask the applicants as to, perfect, what their intention was, where there's some flexibility, where there isn't. Mm-hmm. So I think that's, with your approval, that's where we'll go with that, instead of a rating system.
Mhm.
And then there's another couple of areas that I think are also really important.
Mhm.
Things like are zoning changes required, because that is a whole other level of, work
Complexity.
that needs to be done around this. That's another question that needs to be posed at town meeting, is approval of the zoning changes to make a proposal work, if in fact it is requiring some sort of zone change. Also, any sort of incentives like a TIF that might be requested, because again, that's another thing that would have to be proposed to the citizenry, voters at town meeting. And I think also we really need to have a better sense of both the initial and ongoing cost to the town of any proposal.
Absolutely.
Or benefit to the town.
Right.
Because, both might be applicable in terms of, is there any sort of ongoing investment in the proposal that's going to need to be made for it to be, viable, or, are we going to get some sort of benefit from it, like, properties back on the tax rolls, or whatever it may be. So I think those are three other things that we want to have a better idea of.
I'd agree. That's why I brought it up, because I thought we had discussed and envisioned, and I hate to use the term review of a proposal. What they're really doing is looking at conformity of the proposals against the criterion listed in the proposals, so that we, the select board, when we go to presentations, will be better armed with what questions we might want to zone in on the various criterion of the RFP. Other comments from the select board? Allison?
I do think that we should be careful about the idea of criteria and strict adherence to that, because we have criteria that have been identified through past planning exercises. Then we also have, town goals that are less formalized, perhaps, or community. It's the Community and Economic Development Committee, and so the idea that they would be sort of free to also weigh in on other factors that how these proposals relate to larger, community and economic development goals for the town, and that's really broad. And so I don't want them to get to the end of this and feel like, well, we didn't actually get to give our real opinion because the select board only asked us to, rank X, Y, or Z, and whether they had a plan for VRAP finalization in phase 6, or ultimately the whole goal is just to get it so that people.
Mark?
I'd like to say this is going to be an interesting situation, because what I'd like to see our role is to clarify the 4 proposals, what they can do, their ability to do what they said they do, and how long it would take, and then present it to the public. Because unlike so many different kinds of situations, public has been more involved in this situation for years and years. Just about anything else I've seen in the town, there's tremendous interest. And I think it's our job to bring the information forward through this process, so that when the people get to vote on it, they have a really clear idea on what the different proposals are, what their ability to do what they want to do is, and what will happen if they vote for those proposals.
Mm-hmm.
It's really going to be a town decision. And I want to make that clear. That's how I feel about it. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that's where we're headed. It's not that CDAC is going to make a decision and we're going to eliminate somebody because they didn't dot that T and cross that I. Clarification and asking the right questions are the goal, so that when the public gets to vote on it, they will be able to make a really good decision.
Thanks, Mark. I think, I don't think anything that you talked about, Audra, regarding the RFP and its criterion, there's nothing that says that somebody, if they don't completely conform with some criterion, that they're automatically thrown out. And but also, to Allison's point, if there is some beyond the criterion that are stipulated and written here in the RFP, if CDAC has some input per that's fine. I mean, that's.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want it to be too broad,
No.
like, I mean, that was a point that Taylor brought up that, you know, and I think you all agreed with, you wanted it to be specific enough so they had, it didn't turn into something else that got workshopped and talked about and never, a decision was never, or some sort of recommendation was never made to the board.
Right.
And they're not recommending a specific proposal, but it's more of, you want them to have something pretty specific to, assess against the consistency.
Yeah.
So I think to Allison's point as well, you know, you have your sort of identified goals as a select board, and we also have a comprehensive plan. So those are two areas where you might also ask CDAC to pull from. To
Absolutely.
see if, you know, and how consistent are the proposals with any of those goals and any of the, sort of, what did we call the strategies in the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
And some of those things, they, you know, you might have proposals that, they very much, are consistent with different goals within the comp plan or different goals of the select board. So,
Sure.
I mean, just because, you know, I don't think that you'll find that any one is necessarily better than the other. It's just going to be different, and figuring out with all those differences, what becomes a higher priority.
Well, short of creating this list of questions in this meeting, what should be our next step? Because we don't have that here.
Well, I think that you approve this criteria and you send it to CDAC. So settle on something that you're comfortable with.
When you say
Approve
criteria.
what criteria? I'd rather
So,
a little bit loose for
Well,
feedback.
maybe I can touch on it.
One second. I just want to, when you say criteria, you mean these bullet points that are in the letter here?
no, so the Jeremy attached that, or we have the select, the draft criteria in the select board packet.
Yes.
And then I just kind of suggested a few other things to all of you.
I see.
So there's 9 items then total, including the costs, you know, but both, you know, plus and minuses to the town, zone change required and TIF. And we also talked about at the last meeting about comp plan and the priorities of the select board and the town. I think those are the things that
Okay.
they're going to discuss, and they're going to stay within my intent. And I think everyone's intent is for them to stay focused on that and not try to get off of that, and provide some questions to you and some background information so you guys can then at some point interview those.
Okay, is that clear? Taylor, do you have a comment?
Yeah, no, that is clear to me. I guess just to comment on sort of a little bit of what I think we were talking about in terms of being careful that the criteria doesn't pigeonhole CDAC into just giving us this technical document that doesn't really answer any questions. I think that's a concern for me. So my comment on that is, like, I would ask that if the folks at CDAC think about things in a big picture way, while they're also looking at nailing down the minutia of the criteria, and that if there are obvious benefits, meaningful benefits in a certain proposal that they feel like isn't represented well in one of the criteria, that's simply commented on, so we're aware of it, and it can be as simple as that.
I think Taylor's exactly right there. I mean, I think if you look at all 4 proposals, there are benefits, right? There are benefits to all 4 proposals. So I think let them focus on this and present you with some things.
Allison, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm okay. That was
Okay. All right. If everyone agrees then in those elements, I agree. Don't stifle creativity. As select board, we're the ones that are going to be managing the workshop, which will be the next step after CDAC, to listen to the presentations of all 4, I believe it's 4, correct? 4 proposals, and probably asking questions of our own, never mind the ones that are on the CDAC's feedback. So
Do we have a time frame?
that was my next question.
Yeah, in terms of when we want CDAC to, I think that's important.
I think they're available to meet the week after Thanksgiving. The majority of them appear to be able to meet. then. So it's either going to happen that week or the week right after that. I'm hoping the week after Thanksgiving.
I would imagine they're not gonna do this all in one meeting, are they? Are they gonna like meet and then take some time as individuals to go through stuff?
I mean, I would think that they'll show up at the meeting having read them, and
Okay.
they might have questions or something, but I'm guessing it might take them a few meetings to go
Yeah,
through everything.
okay.
It's probably gonna take December.
And my intent is to also make sure they have a copy of the comp plan, the select board priorities, and, every proposal as well as the RFP. So that they have that well ahead of time.
Okay. Allison,
Can we also make it clear that during this time, I think we have been clear that no decisions are being made by this, but that the public can also, that doesn't need to see CDAC as their mechanism to have their voice heard right now. I think the goal here is to prepare so that we can have good and useful presentations from the proposal, the applicants, or however you want to put it, and that the public could very much be sending, and I would love that if people would read the proposals and then also send questions or concerns about individual proposals to, I would imagine, Jeremy, so that those things can be, or to Bob or whoever wants to aggregate it all. So that we can have that going in, so that when we have an opportunity to ask questions, we'll already know some of the things that are on the minds of people.
you're correct, Allison. The best advisory committee is the entire citizenry of Camden. So any feedback would be very, very helpful. I would agree.
Especially if they'll read first. It does get a little frustrating to get a lot of emails. And a lot of the time people just don't realize that they can go on the website and read them all.
Right.
So it's extra helpful if people read them.
So it sounds like we've got a clear vision. I don't think this is CDAC's an advisory committee to the select board, and we're advising that advisory committee, we're saying this is what we want you to look at. So I'm not sure we need a motion here for any kind of action.
You want a consistent, uniform review of all proposals that the town could then take and try to do something with.
Yeah.
Exactly what CDAC's going to do.
You need us to act on this, or just, you want us, we can do it, it's fine.
I mean, I don't think you necessarily need to act on it. I think that, it's just as much us knowing that you all sort of agree with this course of action, so that when it comes back to you, you're comfortable with the outcome of it.
Right. No, and I think I'm hearing now with those comments that were made, that we all five of us are comfortable with that. That first task, as it were, in the 3 tasks we discussed last time, is the process to get to the eventual goal of getting something on the ballot next year.
So maybe we call it a straw poll if everybody's in agreement.
Yeah, let me ask this, is anybody in disagreement with what we've discussed here regarding CDAC? What? What, Allison?
I was making a joke, but it was kind of inappropriate just because of the frustration with past straw polls and the confusion.
Okay, I missed it, sorry. You have unanimous support for it.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Sarah, for coming and giving us your feedback. I'm sure we'll talk again. So we got a ways to go with this one. Okay, on to our next item, which is the update on established priorities. And the first one is the MDOT Pedestrian Forum.
So I want to be like a live advertisement for the forum, which is tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Zoom. And it goes till 8:30, I believe. That's when it's scheduled. It's probably going to finish sooner than that, though. So this is the follow-on forum from the one that we had, it seems like 1,000,000 years ago. Does anybody even remember what month it was that the initial forum?
February.
It was in February. And this is sort of very much a refinement of, some of the outcomes of that forum and determining, priorities for MDOT, priorities for the town. It's I think going to be focused as much on behavioral aspects of pedestrian safety. So anyway, it's just the next step in that process. And I would very much encourage everybody who is involved initially to come to the forum, and also anybody else who's interested in pedestrian safety measures the town and MDOT might be able to take. And I think this is going to be very important for, if everybody remembers, there was $200,000 worth of engineering funding allocated for complete streets. And we're really sort of waiting to find out what the outcomes of all of this are going to be, so that we're able to target the use of that money on projects that, you know, there's some consensus around as being really important.
How does somebody find this link?
So there's all kinds of information on the town's website. It's also up on our Facebook page. And that can give you all the information on how you can participate.
Perfect. Perfect. And it's tomorrow from 6 to 8:30.
Yes.
Okay.
Janice, are you organizing this?
You're
You're
muted.
muted.
Janice.
It's all through MDOT.
It's
But
DOT's meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I just need to know where to
Audra
get a
is-
link.
MDOT deal. Okay, so, but it's on the website.
yes.
The Zoom link is on the website too.
Okay, great.
We should make sure that it's going to get live streamed as well. I personally live streamed the last one, so, but hopefully now they just have to, if they make one of us a co-host or something, then we can put it on the town YouTube channel, but maybe we can try to remember to follow up with that early tomorrow.
Good idea. Great. COVID-19 response.
Yes, so as you've probably seen from the memo that I put in your packet, we're transitioning to a half remote, half in-person schedule, just because of the rise in case numbers across the state and the county. And the county's currently gone to yellow, so we're just trying to do our part to be as cautious as possible. So there's a number of measures that we're taking, and a lot of this has been determined by the needs of the departments. And it's going to go across pretty much all of the departments and the way that they function. For example, Janice and I are on alternating days when we're going to be in the office as much as we can. Sometimes that gets difficult to maintain, but we're trying. It's the code office. I think that they're going to be a little different because Wyatt's starting next week. So I think for a time they're going to, be together in the building a little bit more. But other than that, we're attempting to, as much as we can, distance everyone and stagger when people are physically present within all of our buildings. Does anybody have any specific questions about any of the departments or?
Yeah, I have a question, Audra. When people are available by phones, are you able to transfer the work number to their home phones? Is that the way it works?
Yeah, we can forward work phones to home
Okay,
phones.
I'm just sort of curious because it says people be available by phone. But I think it's a great plan, and I thank you for being proactive about it.
Is that it, Audra, on COVID-19 response?
Sorry, Allison had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Allison.
I did see in the news the situation with Northeast Ambulance,
Oh, yes.
and was just
Okay.
curious if you have any additional information on that, and whether, how concerned we need to be or not be about calling an ambulance.
I don't have a lot of additional information. I called Butch Russell, the chief operating officer, about this yesterday. And a lot of what's going on now, it's sort of in the hands of the contact tracers in terms of the individuals that have tested positive. They're on a pretty frequent testing regime. And so out of, I think, 24 people that cycle in and out of that base and work as paramedics or EMTs, it was those 5 that have tested positive. And I think the rest, anyone who is deemed a close contact, is quarantining and testing until they're safe to come back to work. And I guess across the board, call volume is down. So they're not very concerned about being able to respond to 911 calls. So that's really not going to be an issue. And I think that, you know, the bigger issue is around, you know, them re-looking at some of their policies and practices on, you know, safe, like making sure that they're providing or everybody's wearing the proper PPE and protocols around that. So I think, you know, they're looking into it now that this outbreak has happened.
Jenna?
So just really quickly, I guess as much information as we have is sort of what's been reported. I know that people are reticent about using Northeast. It doesn't feel like there's been a great deal of transparency. There's always, you know, the rumors in the community. I saw this person out. I've shared some of this with you, Audra. Do we still, I mean, obviously we don't have a lot of choices here, but we feel that Northeast is taking the proper protocols to ensure that people that they are working with and coming to the aid of now are safe.
I mean, that's not something I can speak to, but it's a really good question. And
it's a community concern that I heard it twice yesterday, as you know.
Yeah.
Just want to be able to feel confident in that, obviously.
Definitely. I mean, that is something that I can speak to, you know, our fire chief and others that we work with that also work closely with Northeast and just figure out where everybody is in that regard.
I feel like armed with information would be a good place to be.
Audra, I've mentioned this before, but and Taylor, I think you'll agree with me that the EMS committee from the 4 towns is way overdue for a Zoom meeting with EMS, and with this as part of it, we really need to schedule something. So if you could work on that, I would appreciate it.
I hear you, Mr. Chairman, and I will let them know that you've requested a meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Let's see, we're on to discussion items. And this, by the way, the item A is town managers and select board reports, so which is a typo there. We could start with either or. Do you have a preference, Audra?
No, I feel like I mean, one of the updates was the Northeast stuff, and I think we covered the COVID stuff as well, so I'll let all of you take the floor.
All right. So we'll talk to select board reports and go to Mr. Ratner.
Actually, I have started off most of my reports lately talking about the virus and how it's a time to be careful. And obviously, I think everybody knows that now. I would implore everybody to be safe, be really thoughtful and careful over the Thanksgiving holidays. And I have to say, I have seen very good. I haven't been in a grocery store without seeing everybody with masks. I haven't been in a lot of stores. The one area I see, and for parents that are paying attention, I've had a couple discussions with a couple school teachers recently that I was interacting with. Kids, after they get out of school, walking downtown are usually not wearing masks. And there's been a tremendous amount of spread of the virus through children. You know, they don't get as sick as adults do in most cases, not every case, but they can spread it just as strongly. So please make sure that you communicate with your children how important it is to wear masks. It's not just about friends, you know, it's as dangerous as any other contact. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Mark. Ms. Jenna, do you have anything? You're muted.
I do have one quick thing that's more of a ponderance at the moment than anything else, although it would need to be quick action. I have had a few people mention to me that they have concerns about Christmas by the Sea moving forward. With the case, with having had an average of 30 daily cases in the state of Maine just about a month ago, and now being at 190 and change and rising now. And I have heard, and I don't want to be a Grinch, but I've heard both of our sort of main winter events, toboggans and Christmas by the Sea. I've heard concerns in the community, and I feel that it would be remiss not to bring them up. I don't know what the action is on those items. I know that the business group is running Christmas by the Sea this year. I do feel that we need to be extremely strong on mask enforcement and be on the same page with them, whether that's a lot of our resources. I think there are a couple of components to this, and I don't have an opinion either way. I do understand the concerns, and I'm hearing them pretty loud and clear from a lot of people. And a lot of other towns have canceled their holiday events this year, so people are coming to Christmas by the Sea. Because we're one of the few towns that is doing something, and I know that they've worked so hard to make it safe, and so it really pains me to say that I'm certainly not trying to diminish anyone's priorities or anyone's hard work, but I think it's important that we acknowledge that that's.
Thanks, Jim. Good points, very good points.
Oh, and I guess to add to that, so all of you approved the partial closure of Chestnut Street for the Baptist Church, and they've informed me that they're withdrawing it because they're not going to do that event.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
For the, this is for the.
Wow.
The night in Bethlehem.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
canceling it.
Okay. Allison, did I see your hand up?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't know I had to raise my hand for select board reports, but yeah, I just have something quick. I guess a lot of, as many parents are going through right now with the remote schooling schedule, some of us having kids at home on a bi-weekly basis, and with so many after-school activities canceled. I'm wondering, I have gotten questions about the teen center and what is available. For a lot of the time, we're closing schools or going to a more hybrid model in order to protect kids in the community and slow down transmission. But a lot of parents don't have the option of, just being at home supervising their kids. And so it seems, what I'm seeing is that every time school gets rolled back a little bit, I'm getting lots of calls from lots of friends scrambling to try to figure out, how are we going to make this work? And it forces us into a situation where, you're bringing extra kids home. Parents are afraid to have them take the bus. I'm wondering if we can just find that, the town does put money into having the teen center be available. We do have additional funds. If we could just reach out. I know you're in touch sometimes with the Y, Audra, but to try to figure out if there are things we can do to make, come up with the funds to help something be available. What we've seen is that schools, as long as there are guidelines being followed, the schools aren't the source of the spread of the virus. So having an environment where adults can supervise and kids can be there following, set procedures is working. And I'm just kind of curious about where the teen center is. Also, maybe Mark has the.
I can say I had a discussion with with Melissa, the head of the Y, and it was earlier this year, it was a while ago, but because of COVID, they were not able to, the teen center has not been open. So I don't know that that's changed, and probably not. They don't have the staffing or the space to do it in a safe manner.
Right.
One thing, Beth Ward and I have talked with Melissa about the Y sort of, because they're not able to offer a lot of their normal programming or activities. So we suggested, well, maybe a bigger focus on childcare during this time would be, a good pivot for them and very responsive and helpful for the community. And I'm happy to kind of have that discussion with Melissa again and kind of flesh that out. And
I mean, one of the things that the budget committee did this past year was make sure that we had a very healthy select board contingency to be able to be supportive. And so, if the schools can manage to open because of even with COVID, then we know it is possible. I totally get the staffing part, but staffing can be answered with funding a lot of the time, and space or So I would just really support, I do feel that we have funds available in a variety of pots that could be really invested. Because otherwise this hybrid stuff and all of these measures, it's not going to matter because parents are forced to leave kids, you know, with grandparents and do all the things we're being encouraged not to do. So that's that. And then on a different, happier note, Norwood Avenue is kind of an interesting point of interest for anybody to travel down. We talked a lot about advisory lanes for Mechanic Street and ultimately decided that we weren't ready to roll out that kind of a solution to slow traffic down on Mechanic Street. We came up with a different approach with just putting some fog lines on the side of the road. But Norwood Avenue was just recently restriped, and that is kind of your example now of what advisory lanes are. And there isn't signage up yet that says, you know, exactly how it's supposed to work, but most cars already travel right down the middle of the lane there, or of the road, and only move over really when there's another car coming. And so this basically, it just has, you know, dotted lines on the side and creates this sidewalk bike lane kind of option. So for anybody that gets questions, you can tell them to Google advisory lanes, but then also you might not have a chance to, normally we might not go down Norwood Avenue unless you make a point of it, but it's a good opportunity to see an example of that, especially ahead of maybe the pedestrian safety forum tomorrow, which I hope everybody makes an effort to just blast that out to all of your contacts, because these things are useless if we don't get participation.
Thanks, Allison. Thank you. Kelly, you have anything?
I'm all set tonight. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, I would say the same for myself. Any comments on the last item on the agenda, which is the financial expenses of town, financial expenses and revenue through the first third of our year, October 31st, 2020.
Very nice to see season pass sales at the Snow Bowl kicked in the last week of October.
Yeah, that's very true.
Keep our fingers crossed.
That's good. The good point. It's great news. On the expenses and summary, I did review the expenses, and I have to say, you know, I would have expected with this COVID stuff going on, there would be some impact somewhere on the budget somehow, and I don't see it at this point in time. Everything's tracking well for expenses. Everything's tracking well for revenue. And you saw Jody's exception report. There's nothing of any consequence there. So through the first third of the year, if I get my months right, everything's looking pretty good financially for the town of Camden against its established 2021 budget. Are there any questions on the financial? Allison?
Did I see that in the harbor, we exceeded projections for whatever short-term dockage, or we're doing better than normal?
Not better than normal, but we remember after
better than we thought. Was it just better than we thought we would?
Yeah, we did a pretty, I remember after COVID, there was a lot of emphasis placed on reducing that revenue because the guess was that we would not get as many transient boaters this summer, and we actually did fairly well.
Very true. Very true. I think people decided to take the boats rather than the highways. I guess. I don't know.
I guess if you're going to be stuck.
You must be stuck on a boat. Because there's food all around you.
As long as the head keeps working.
Good question. Thanks, Allison. With that, hold on one second. We would entertain a motion to adjourn the select board meeting, and we will open the executive session pursuant to MRSA 405 6E, legal rights and duties.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Allison?
So I am generally a person that errs on the side of not thinking that anything needs to be private, and I recognize that I'm not always right about that, but in general, I feel that when we are going to go into executive session, that we should at least do a little better than this very vague legal matters or legal rights and responsibilities that we at least owe it. Well, first of all, even for our own personal knowledge, it's like this catch-22 to vote to go into executive session before you know what the executive session is about. And you kind of have to get in there to know of whether it was truly necessary for it to be an executive session. So I'm going to vote no on this tonight, understanding that I'm likely to be in the minority, and mostly to make a point that I do think we have to, I would like to see, a strong case being made for executive sessions in general. And at the very least, just a little bit more description in general about, the category.
Well put, I understood. With that, roll call vote on adjournment. Taylor?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jenna?
Aye.
Allison?
Nay.
Bob, aye. Thank you. 4-1 to adjourn. We will adjourn. Thank you very much, and we will,
Bob,
Executive session, or
what?
not to, or 4-1 to go into executive session, not to adjourn.
No, we vote 4-1 to adjourn the meeting, and then we would enter executive session, is what I said.
I don't know.
That's the way the motion was, to adjourn and move into an executive session.
Right.
It was combined.
Correct.
I know where you're coming from. I heard both motions, so
But the problem is if we adjourn, then we can't have another motion to go into executive session.
Correct.
Adjourning is different from going into executive session, but I'm sure Bill Kelly will chime in if he wants to.
We can clarify that. Thank you so much.
hey, Bob,
Who's speaking?
Bill Kelly, can you folks hear me?
Pretty well.
Oh, sorry, Janice, we're still live on YouTube.
Yeah,
Well,
I wasn't sure when you were ready to go into executive session now. Okay.
We are.
I just had a